What's going on everybody, DiGi Valentine here right about now. The original SEGA Saturn release of Nights into Dreams has a whole heaping bunch of unused animations for the two dreamers Elliot and Claris, as well as Nights themselves. In this video I'm going to document some of these cut animations as well as theorise on what they might have been used for in context with the game. Before I begin, I want to shout out Andreas Scholl for data mining these. They were his discoveries and they are all documented in full on his own YouTube channel, so if you want to further study these animations yourself, then head on over there and check them out. All the animation footage I'm using for this video is coming directly from Andreas's own recordings of the animation data. It's also worth noting that Andreas has loaded all these assets into Unity 3D, which is why the visuals look a lot tidier and cleaner than the average SEGA Saturn output. With that said, let's begin by covering the animations for the two dreamer characters first. In this video, Claris will be demonstrating all the animations for both herself and for Elliot as well. Some of these animations could have been shared by both of them, while other animations might have been exclusive to either Claris or Elliot respectively. Okay, let's begin. It would appear that the dreamers might have had some forward flipping motion, where they leap forwards onto their hands and then sling themselves back over onto their feet. It's hard to say what this could have been used for gameplay wise. Maybe it was a scrapped evasive maneuver, though it doesn't seem very practical if it is. It could be terrain specific or something exclusively used for a particular level, but again, it's hard to say. Next, now, unless I'm mistaken, during gameplay, Claris and Elliot never hold anything in their hands, right? Well, if that's the case, then there would appear to be two unused animations that depict the kids holding objects. Their arms will be held out as if they're carrying something, and you can move around while in these poses too, meaning whatever they're carrying could be transported. The first variation is them holding something in one hand, while the second one requires both hands to lift. I speculate that these might be related to the NiGHTS eggs. If you think about how the A-Life system in Nights is a precursor to the Chow system in Sonic Adventure, perhaps at one point in time the kids might have been able to pick up NiGHTS and A-Life related objects in the same way Sonic and friends can pick up Chow. Of course, this is just a theory. These animations could have been used for carrying anything, but I'm personally betting on it being NiGHTS related.
Move, bitch, get out the way. Get out the way, bitch, get out the way. Move, bitch, get out the way.
I have no idea what this is. It could be part of one of their jumping animations, but I don't know. I don't recognize this one at all. To me, it looks like Claris is driving an invisible car, but what do I know? So this one is weird to pin down. I originally thought it might have been one of the animations that the dreamers used during Twin Seeds, but upon playing the level, I couldn't see any that exactly matched this animation. The closest one would be when the kids are flying into Nightmare to fight the final boss Wiseman, but even then there are differences between the poses, so I don't think this is in the final version of Twin Seeds. The animation itself appears to be some sort of free fall. It almost looks like they're skydiving. So then I got thinking, what if this is some sort of beta version of the level loading animation? In the final game, Elliot and Claris dive feet first into their dreams during the level loading screen, but in the sequel game, Journey of Dreams, Will and Helen perform an animation much more similar to this skydiving form. It's difficult to say for sure, but unless this is an animation that I'm overlooking from Twin Seeds, I don't think this skydiving pose appears anywhere in the game. And if it doesn't, then I'm speculating it could be a cut version of the level loading animations. But that's just my take on that. There's no evidence to prove it actually was such a thing. I don't think this one is in the game. I certainly don't remember there being any animation of the kids slipping and landing flat on their ass. I speculate this might be a level specific animation, probably linked to Frozen Belle if anything. There's also this pose that I don't recognize. To me, it looks like the character is covering their face in fear, though it's hard to tell because there's no movement. So I'm not sure if this is in the game somewhere or not, but it really doesn't look familiar to me. And just for shits and giggles, Andreas decided to load all of Sonic's animations from his Sonic Into Dreams cameo onto Claris. And yes bruv. Now, let's move on to NiGHTS' animations. Because NiGHTS has a lot of animations in this game, some of these can be difficult to confirm if they're actually used or not, mainly due to some movements looking similar to others. If I come across any that I'm unsure about, then I'll say so. That being said, the animations that are definitely unused are intriguing to say the least, and once again, we're going to be theorizing like crazy. So hold tight, here we go. This unused animation would appear to be some sort of leapfrogging motion. It looks like NiGHTS is vaulting themselves over an object or perhaps an enemy. It could be an unused early variation of NiGHTS' touch dash ability, a maneuver that allows NiGHTS to keep their momentum going if they run into an enemy and don't want to stop to deal with them. Or it could be something specific to one of the boss fights. Perhaps this action might have been used as part of a gimmick to defeat one of the bosses. Or maybe it was a completely different action altogether. Who knows? This one is hard to figure out. Out of context from the game, this animation on its own looks like NiGHTS spins and then starts slapping away at something, which if that's the case isn't something we see anywhere in the game. But then again, NiGHTS has some similar looking animations for when they're flying too close to a surface, and it's entirely possible this could be one of those instances, and I'm just failing to recognize it when viewing it from this angle. But it does look different from the ones seen in the game, so I don't know about this one. It looks weird, and I don't think I've ever seen it before, but I could very well be wrong. Another weird and uncertain one. Out of context, it looks like NiGHTS is being spun around as they struggle to break free. The flailing of their arms and legs makes it seem like NiGHTS is panicking, at least that's what I can decipher from this sort of movement. This could be an unused animation, but I'm not entirely sure. It seems strange, but at the same time it also seems kinda familiar. And maybe it's similar to another animation that I'm just not pinpointing. I don't know. I think it's unused, but it might not be. Okay, I am convinced this one isn't used, but it's a little difficult to confirm. In-game, NiGHTS has different animations for when they're in flight. Sometimes they'll lightly kick their feet behind them, sometimes they'll strike a pose, sometimes they'll position their arms at an angle. NiGHTS has a variety of different animations depending on their movement and flight path, but I absolutely do not recognize this one. In this animation, they're moving their torso and their arms in a fluid left to right, right to left motion, and it's completely unrecognizable to me. It's entirely possible that it could be used in a very specific circumstance, but after a lot of personal testing, I've been unable to pinpoint how it would trigger, so I'm going to say this one is an unused flight animation until someone finds it, if they find it. There's also this other flight animation that I don't recognize either. It appears to be NiGHTS performing a sharp turn or a deep banking maneuver before they straighten themselves out. Or maybe they're angling their body to dodge an incoming projectile from an enemy. It could be either of the two, or something else entirely, but I definitely don't recognize this animation. Now, maybe it's just the positioning of this animation that gives it this vibe, but to me this appears to be NiGHTS hanging off the side of a wall or some other surface and is getting ready to take off. It seems like they're about to leap themselves into the air. I could absolutely be wrong about that, but that's just what this looks like to me. I don't recall ever seeing NiGHTS hold a position like this at any point, especially one that's animated in this way, so I'm personally thinking it's unused. This unused animation appears to show NiGHTS quickly spinning and then immediately landing. What's interesting to note about this animation is NiGHTS' feet. NiGHTS has clearly placed their feet flat against the surface. And why is this interesting? Well, this is something that NiGHTS doesn't do very often. They're an airborne character. NiGHTS is always seen floating in the air. Even if you try to land the character on the ground yourself, they will merely float upon the tips of their toes. They will rarely, if at all, land feet flat upon a surface. So seeing this animation is intriguing because it's something the character doesn't do a lot of, making me wonder the context of this animation. Maybe it's a forced landing, putting NiGHTS on the ground abruptly and not entirely within their control. Or it could be a landing of a different variety. Perhaps NiGHTS is landing atop the head of an enemy, or some sort of springboarded level object that will propel them outwards. Or if we rotate the camera, maybe they're landing on the side of a wall and are getting ready to leap from it. There are definitely a number of possibilities for what this unused animation could have been used for. Now, this might look familiar to most fans because the pose that NiGHTS is striking at the end of the animation is their default pose for when they have landed. However, the startup for this animation is unused. In this animation, NiGHTS appears to leap back briefly in some sort of star jump before gracefully bowing and then striking the pose that we all recognize. But it's this bowing gesture that I'd like to highlight. As a character, NiGHTS is well known for bowing, like a performer at the end of a play. During the game's intro FMV, NiGHTS does a variation of this motion to wrap up their own introduction, where Sonic is known for impatiently tapping his foot. In a similar way, one of NiGHTS' signature gestures is to bow. But during gameplay of NiGHTS Into Dreams, a motion of this kind is never seen. NiGHTS doesn't bow at all during gameplay segments. That means that this unused animation would have been an in-game version of that signature gesture. Perhaps it would have been used as an idle stance, or maybe when a dreamer first approaches the Idia Palace. It could have even been used for the end of a level in some fashion, as a winning pose maybe. Whatever its purpose, it's cool finally seeing NiGHTS perform this move with their in-game model, and it's a real big shame that it goes unused in the final game. This unused animation is definitely a highly dramatic, if somewhat weird one. It's difficult to figure out what NiGHTS is even doing here. To me, it looks like NiGHTS is either yelling or shouting, or they're having some sort of gigantic freakout. Without context, it's hard to decipher. I speculate that it might have been an animation for when NiGHTS is imprisoned in the Idia Palace. It's also kinda funny to watch because the animation seems to break at the very end, showing NiGHTS' head turn upside down before quickly correcting itself. I'm not sure why that happens, but I doubt it was an intended part of this cut animation. Speaking of animations within the Idia Palace, there is this one animation that is used in the final game, but I wanted to bring it up because I personally believe it might be connected to a different piece of cut content. This animation is used to show NiGHTS hovering around inside their prison, waiting for the dreamers to break them free. I was just never sure what NiGHTS was doing in this animation until I saw it in Andreas's video where the visual quality is much clearer. Now it seems to make some sense. Simply put, NiGHTS appears to be goofing off. They've raised their hands to their head and are motioning them in some sort of playful manner. And if that is the case, then I'm speculating if one of NiGHTS' unused facial expressions might link with this precise animation. The unused expression I'm referring to is NiGHTS' huge smile. Similar to the bowing gesture, one of NiGHTS' other signature poses is them pulling their face into a wide toothed grin. It's a somewhat cheeky and mischievous pose, which seems to be represented here by the way NiGHTS is moving their hands. I wonder then if that unused facial expression is meant to be used in conjunction with this goofy, playful animation. If so, it would help to explain why the animation on its own has always looked weird. This animation could very well be missing a facial expression that completes it. But of course, that's just my theory on that one. And while we're on the subject of unused facial expressions, do you remember that unused pouting face I mentioned in a previous video? Well, unless I'm barking up the wrong tree, we might have potentially found the animation that this face could have been used for. NiGHTS has an unused temper tantrum animation, showing them furiously stamping their feet in anger. I'd hazard a guess that the unused pouting face probably belongs to this unused animation. They do seem to complement one another. If that is the case, then I speculate this might be another one of NiGHTS' animations that could have triggered within the Idia Palace. In the game, the player can tease NiGHTS by pretending to approach the prison and then walking away. NiGHTS will accidentally bang their head on the inside of the palace as a result. I speculate this unused tantrum could have been another reaction for NiGHTS to have in that situation. It's not proven and there's no solid evidence, but considering the other animations that take place within the Idia Palace, this theory doesn't sound so unlikely, so I'm gonna go with that. It's either that or NiGHTS is on some mad workout plan. And lastly, NiGHTS has an unused laughing animation. It's very short, so for the sake of presenting it here, I've made an edit to show the laugh lasting for longer than it actually does. In the animation, NiGHTS covers their mouth with their hand and kicks their feet in joyful amusement. They then move into a relaxed airborne sitting pose, which is in the game. But the startup for this, the actual laugh itself, is definitely unused. I speculate this could be another animation that might have triggered while NiGHTS is inside the Idia Palace. It just seems like NiGHTS might be laughing at whatever's going on outside of their prison, maybe even laughing at your misfortune perhaps, but who knows, it's hard to say. I'm not sure if this was purposefully cut by the devs or if there's an error with the game's code that causes the laugh to not trigger, but either way it is unused. And it's a shame because I think this might be one of my favourite unused animations. It shows the humorous, playful side to the character in the form of a well recognised emotion. I think it further adds to NiGHTS' charm. In fact, the last few animations, such as the temper tantrum, really help to express the personality of the character. In a game where there is no dialogue, movement and facial expression are used to carry the mood and tone, and seeing how NiGHTS has a bunch of unused animations and facial expressions that help this form of presentation, it's a shame we're only seeing half of what the character was supposed to be showing us. NiGHTS is a very expressive character, and I really wish these animations were used in the final game. But even still, the fact that they were data mined at all and the fact that we're seeing them now is a big enough deal, and I'm just glad they were found to begin with. Before I go, there's one last thing I wanted to share with you all. While it's not unused, chances are a lot of us probably won't have seen even half of these. It's NiGHTS' full repertoire of aerial acrobatic moves. In the game, if you press or hold the left or right shoulder buttons while making input motions, you can pull off some cool looking tricks. Problem is, unless you are of the god tier level of NiGHTS players who know all the input combinations, chances are you likely won't have seen most of these in regular gameplay. There's like 28 moves or something. Yeah, Sonic Team went in on that for some reason. So, without further ado, here are all of NiGHTS' aerial acrobatic tricks, one after the other. And that's all we have for the unused animations at the moment. If anything else pops up in the future, then obviously I'll make another video about that. If you want to check out the full sets of animations featured in this video, then head on over to Andreas' channel and check them out. Maybe you'll find some unused animations that I might have missed in this video. The links to Andreas' channel are in the video description, so please go and check that out. I've been DiGi Valentine, thanks for your time, take care and stay safe.